This is a dramatized story inspired by real debt situations. For educational and entertainment purposes only. Not legal or financial advice.
$79,000. That was the number staring back at me on my laptop screen at 2 a.m, in my truck, in the driveway of the home I was terrified of losing. I was 43 years old. I had a wife, 2 kids in middle school, and a construction job that paid decent, $68,000 a year when the work was steady. From the outside, we looked fine. We looked normal. Inside, I was suffocating. It didn't start with one big disaster. That's the thing nobody tells you. It starts with 100 small ones. When I was 38, the company I worked for lost a major contract. I got laid off in February. Worst possible time. We had $4,200 in savings. Our mortgage was $1,140 a month. I put groceries on the credit card. I put the electric bill on the credit card. I told myself it was temporary. I'd pay it back when I got back on my feet, and I did get back on my feet. 6 months later. But the card had a $6,800 balance by then, and I was only making minimum payments. Then, in 2020, my knee blew out on a job site. Surgery. 6 weeks off work. The medical bills came in waves. First $2,200, then $4,800 from the surgical center, then $100 from the anesthesiologist, a separate bill, which I didn't even know was coming. My insurance covered some of it. Not enough. I put the rest on a second credit card I opened because the first one was nearly maxed. By the time I was 41, I had 4 credit cards. Visa, $1,400. MasterCard, $14,700. A store card I'd opened for appliances, $6,200. And a personal loan I took out trying to consolidate, $22,000 at 19% interest. Plus the medical debt still sitting in collections, $9,400. Add it all up. It was over $70,000, and it was climbing every single month because I could only afford minimums. I did the math once, really did it. If I paid only the minimum on that visa, it would take me 27 years to pay it off. I'd be 70 years old. My kids would be grown and gone, and I'd still be paying for groceries I bought when they were in elementary school. My wife, Karen, she handled our joint checking account. She knew about the mortgage, the car payments, the regular bills. But the credit cards, I kept those separate. I had the statements going to a P.O. box I rented 2 towns over, $15 a month to maintain the lie. She thought we had one credit card with maybe a few thousand on it. She had no idea. The call started when I fell behind on the personal loan. October. I remember because it was right after my son's birthday party. We'd spent $400 on it that we absolutely could not afford. And the next morning, at 7:02 a.m., my cell phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go. It rang again at 9:15, at 11:48, at 2:30 in the afternoon. 7 calls in one day. The next day, 11 calls. A collection agency had already picked up the account. They left voicemails with my name, the amount owed, a callback number. I deleted every single one before Karen could hear them. I started sleeping, maybe 3-4 hours a night. I'd lie there next to my wife, listening to her breathe, and my brain just ran numbers in circles. Minimum payment due. Penalty APR kicks in. Late fee, $30. Over limit fee, $20. I knew those numbers the way other men know batting averages. At work, I was distracted. My foreman pulled me aside in November and said, "Mitch, you're somewhere else, man. You gotta get your head right." I told him I was dealing with some family stuff. He nodded. He didn't ask more. I was grateful. Karen noticed too. She asked me 3 or 4 times over that fall if everything was okay. I said yes. I said work was stressful. I said I was tired. She believed me because she had no reason not to. We'd been together since we were 24. I had never lied to her about anything serious. This was the biggest lie I'd ever told, and I was getting better at it every day. That scared me more than the debt. December hit, and I made a decision I will regret for the rest of my life. I knew we had a 401k through my current employer. I'd been contributing for 6 years. There was about $31,000 in it. I told myself I'd just pull out enough to pay off the highest interest cards and get some breathing room. I withdrew $14,000. After the 10% early withdrawal penalty and the taxes, which I didn't fully account for, I netted about $2,800. I paid off the store card and put a chunk toward the Visa. Felt like relief for about 3 weeks. Then I got my tax bill in February. Because of that withdrawal, I owed the IRS $3,200 more than I expected. IRS debt. That's a different category of terrifying. The IRS doesn't negotiate the way credit card companies do. They garnish wages. They put liens on property. I set up a payment plan, $180 a month, which just added another hole in the bucket. By March, the balances were back up. The credit card company had raised my interest rate to 99%, penalty APR, because I'd been late twice. The $2,800 I'd taken from my retirement had bought me less than 90 days of breathing room and cost me potentially tens of thousands in future retirement growth. It was the worst financial decision I made in a sequence of bad financial decisions. I tried a balance transfer next, found a card offering 0% APR for 18 months, transferred $9,000 onto it, paid a 3% transfer fee, $270, right off the top. Felt smart for about a month, then I read the fine print. If I missed a single payment, the rate jumped to 26, 99% retroactively on the full balance. I was one emergency away from catastrophe on that card alone. And in my life, emergencies were not hypothetical. The one I didn't see coming was the transmission on my truck in April. $3,800. I needed that truck to get to job sites. I put it on the new balance transfer card. Just like that, I'd blown the strategy before it had a chance to work. By the time I was 43, that April, the total was $79,000. I counted it up on a yellow legal pad one night in the truck. I couldn't bring myself to do it inside the house. $79,000, more than a year of my gross salary, and I was still hiding every single dollar of it from the woman I'd promised to share my whole life with. The turning point didn't come the way I expected. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It was a Tuesday. Karen found a letter. Not the P.O. box. I'd been careful about that. But one of the credit card companies had sent a hardship notice to our home address by mistake. She found it in the mail before I got home from work. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. The letter was in front of her. She looked at me and she said, very quietly, "What is this?" I sat down. And for the first time in almost 2 years, I told her the truth, all of it. The 4 cards, the personal loan, the medical collections, the 401k withdrawal, the IRS payment plan, every number. Her face went through about 10 different emotions in 10 minutes. Shock, disbelief, hurt, anger, fear. And then, after a long silence, she reached across the table and took my hand and said, "Okay, what do we do?" I didn't deserve that. But it changed everything. That night we sat together and wrote down every debt, every balance, every interest rate. The total on the page between us, $79,400. We looked at it together. It was terrifying. It was also, for the first time, real. Not just a weight I was carrying alone in the dark, a real number we could actually work with. Karen found a nonprofit credit counseling agency the next morning, accredited by the NFCC, the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. She made an appointment. 2 days later, we sat across from a certified counselor named Diane. No sales pitch, no pressure. Diane looked at our income, our debts, our monthly expenses, and she laid out our options clearly. Debt settlement. Negotiating with creditors to accept less than the full balance. Sounds good on paper. The reality, it destroys your credit score. The forgiven amount is often taxable as income, and creditors don't have to agree to anything. Diane told us she'd seen families go through 18 months of settlement only to get sued by a creditor anyway. Debt consolidation through a debt management plan, a DMP. The agency negotiates reduced interest rates with creditors. We'd make one monthly payment to the agency, they'd distribute it, our interest rates could potentially drop significantly, but it required closing the credit cards and a commitment of 3 to 5 years. Our FICO score would take a hit initially, but would stabilize over time. Chapter 7. Bankruptcy. Full discharge of unsecured debt. Fast. Typically 3 to 6 months, but we'd likely lose non-exempt assets, and it stays on the credit report for 10 years. Given our income, Diane wasn't sure we'd pass the means test anyway. Chapter 13. Bankruptcy. A reorganization. We'd propose a 3 to 5 year repayment plan, keep our home, keep the truck. The automatic stay would stop collection calls immediately, legally, from day 1. Chapter 13. Stays on the credit report for 7 years, but it protects assets and gives structure. She suggested we consult a bankruptcy attorney for a proper evaluation. Most offer free consultations. She was clear. Consult a licensed professional before making any decisions. She wasn't there to tell us what to do. She was there to make sure we understood what we were actually choosing. We went to see a bankruptcy attorney the following week. He reviewed everything. Given our income and the size of the debt, he said Chapter 13 was likely our best path. The automatic stay would stop the collection agency calls on day 1 of filing. Our mortgage would be protected. My truck, essential for work, would be protected under exemptions. We'd pay a structured monthly amount for 48 months based on what we could actually afford, not what the credit card companies demanded. The credit counselor's DMP was also a viable option he respected. It wouldn't have the same legal protections as bankruptcy, but it also wouldn't carry the bankruptcy designation on our credit report. We chose to file Chapter 13. I won't pretend it wasn't one of the hardest decisions of my life. There's a shame attached to that word, bankruptcy, that I wasn't prepared for. But I'll tell you what's also true. The morning after we filed, I woke up and the first thought in my head was not debt. It was the first time that had happened in 2 years. The calls stopped. Legally, completely, immediately. The automatic stay is real. 1 letter from our attorney to the collection agency, and it was over. We're 14 months into our repayment plan now. We make 1 payment a month. It's structured. It's manageable. Our FICO score took a serious hit when we filed, dropped significantly, but it's been slowly rebuilding. Diane at the credit counseling agency told us that's normal. The key is no new debt, on-time payments, and time. Karen and I talk about money now. Every week, we have a shared spreadsheet. Nothing is hidden. It turns out the financial transparency is harder than I expected, and also the best thing that ever happened to our marriage. We're not out yet. I want to be honest about that. We have over 2 more years left on the plan. There will be no vacations, no new cars, no unnecessary spending, but I know exactly where we stand every single day. That knowledge, even when the number is scary, is better than the alternative. If you are sitting in your car right now running the same numbers I was running, I want you to hear this. The debt is not the worst part. The isolation is the worst part. The second you tell one honest person, your spouse, a nonprofit credit counselor, a bankruptcy attorney, the weight changes. It doesn't disappear, but you're not carrying it alone in the dark anymore. Start with a nonprofit credit counselor. The NFCC has a locator on their website. It's free. It's confidential. They are not there to sell you something. Then, if bankruptcy is on the table, find a licensed bankruptcy attorney in your state. Most do free consultations. Understand Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13 before you decide anything. Understand what debt settlement actually does to your FICO score and your tax liability before you sign with anyone. And please, consult a licensed professional before making any financial or legal decisions. Every situation is different. Mine is not yours. But you can get to the other side of this. I'm living proof that the math you think is impossible at 2 a.m. in your driveway is not the final answer. Get the free debt checklist in the description. Link is below.